Today on Locked On Canadiens, new season, same old Habs. That's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 935. Great start for me, just like it's been a great start for the Habs. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Zora Sab, also known as the Active Stick, and here with me, as always, is Scott Matlev, Habs Eyes on the Prize, and we are about to break down what is going on with the Montreal Canadiens. It looks like we're seeing repeats of last season. Poor power play, poor penalty kill, weird defense, and all these injuries. Scott, tonight's game against Minnesota, there was so much promise, and it all unraveled so early in the game.
I have tried to come up with the words that I wanted to say about this, and I realized I couldn't say most of them on this podcast because we've seen a lot of dumb things happen in Montreal Canadiens history, especially since we have started this show here. 2 shorthanded goals against on the same power play within 25 seconds of each other is such a new level of disaster class that it actively is giving me an ulcer on the inside of my body right now. Is that we knew the Canadiens were coming into this game down Kirby Dach for the season. Yes, that is a big problem, and we knew that was going to be a big problem. That's not an easy player to replace on this team. Alex Newhook did score a goal in this game, which great, good for him. 3-3 so far. We love that for him. It's just the team didn't have anything. The power play stunk to high hell. The penalty kill was terrible. And I'm like, Samuel Montembeault did everything he could, and it wasn't close to enough for this. It was a special teams disaster. Like at 5-on-5, the Canadiens weren't great either. They got outclassed pretty much across the board. Ended with more expected goals, etc. But like, this was not a game that felt like it was close. And it's not like, oh, they got into a shootout with the Toronto Maple Leafs, who have all these star players. Going into this game, the Minnesota Wild didn't have Matt Boldy and Alex Goligoski. They did not have the cap space to call somebody up. They played a man short in this game. They had 17 total skaters and then their 2 goaltenders. That is it.
Also,
no spares.
Back-to-back against Toronto cannot be discounted.
They played Toronto last week. But
who did they play last night then?
I didn't think Minnesota played last night.
Minnesota didn't play last night? I thought they were on the second game of a back-to-back. Oh my God. What is going on with me?
I hope they didn't play last night because that's sure not going to make me feel any better about how this game went.
Oh, was it the Devils that played against the Leafs last night?
The Leafs played Chicago last night. Either way, Minnesota
doing great over here.
It's late. It's fine. Minnesota came into this game at a disadvantage, down bodies and everything. And the Canadiens, yes, you beat Chicago, but you lost Kirby Dach. But you should have been able to handle this. And yes, we said Kirill Kaprizov is great and Eric Sinek is very good. And then you got nothing. And the biggest thing is this, rightly or wrongly, depending on how you feel about NHL officiating, we know it's not great. The Canadiens are the most penalized team in the NHL for minor penalties this year. Eric Engels tweeted out before the third period started they had taken 20 in 2 games and 2 periods worth. They took 2 more penalties within 10 minutes of that tweet. Your penalty kill is not good enough, and you cannot stay out of the box. Figure it out because you are adults. And some of the calls in this game are, give me a break kind of stuff. And some of them are probably legit. But at the same time, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You are staring at a barrel of fish and your foot, and you keep pulling the trigger over your foot here. And I know Martin St. Louis can't be happy with this. I'm not asking for this team to be flawless. No team is flawless when, they play a game of hockey. You take penalties. This is so unacceptable on a team that is not playing well or as inconsistent as they are right now. This should have been a game that's closer than 5-2. If the Canadian special teams on either side had any sort of idea how to be effective at all. And we're going into year 3 of this, and I'm not seeing anything that makes me believe it's going to change anymore. And it's just frustrating and tiring and exhausting. And I got nothing anymore. I don't know what to say about the power play and the penalty kill that hasn't already been said. They suck. They're terrible, and they're not showing any signs of getting better at this point.
And the thing that's really interesting is that it's happened with very many different players over the course of the last couple of years. I don't think that it's too much to hope for that changing the personnel will help, but it seems very clear to me, and it hasn't like this is not new on the Montreal Canadiens. Like with different front office staff and different coaching staff, this is still something that's plaguing them, and it's been plaguing them for many, many, many years. Like there's something that's fundamentally not working. And even when they're trying to execute the tried and true power play or penalty kill formats that most teams do and excel at, it's just not working. There was something that I think was missing a lot, and we are going to talk about the defense in the second segment. We're going to talk about it a little bit more in depth when we talk about Kaiden Guile's injury. But there's something that's missing in terms of the execution with this team, and that's something that Martin St. Louis cannot be happy with. He seems to be very much a moments kind of player. Like you finish your play, you execute well. Like he's talking about reads, he's talking about, scenarios within games and things like that, like how to react and stuff like that. There seems to be a lack of refinement. We know these players are talented because they show it night in and night out. They're not all an equal level of talented, we know it, but like to me it looks like they're not cleaning up their bad habits. They're not committed. I think the word has to be like they have to be committed to excellence, and they're not. And I think that if every player like bought into that and did everything they needed to do to have every single little thing, every single little play executed to the best of their ability, even though they're up against more talented teams, even though we know that they're not an ideal team, like that lack of finishing refinement, excellence on those, like on in-game play situations, like play by play by play, whether or not it's special teams, I feel like it's just sinking the Habs all the time. And with the power play and the penalty kill, yes, you need a different architect. Whoever's in charge of it right now, whoever's been in charge of it for the last couple of years, they need to either bring in someone entirely new, get a consultant, get somebody to practice with these players, get somebody to deal with these players, get somebody to kind of teach these players different strategy, but also the commitment needs to be there from each and every one of them. They're grown-ups. There's a lot of young players on this team, but their lack of maturity, even like all throughout the lineup, is truly astounding to me. And this is the thing. It's like, I know I haven't played the game. I know the game is a lot faster than I think and all of that, but these are professional NHL players. How come other teams can execute? How come other players can execute? How come there's more buy-in? And you can't tell me every single one of these players, they constantly talk about how they would run through a wall for Martin St. Louis. They always talk about how inspiring he is, how they would do anything for him, how he brought a new energy into this team. They're always talking about how committed they are to their coach. I would like them to be a little bit more committed. I want them to be committed to pleasing the coach and doing everything right. Because I was listening to the post game tonight. Martin St. Louis was not pleased with that effort. Not pleased. And you could tell.
He really shouldn't be, because the leader on this team at 5-on-5 expected goals for percentage tonight was Michael Pezzetta. Pezzetta played 5 minutes at 5-on-5.
And he had fights.
And had 2 fights. He ended with 100% expected goals for percentage in this game, which is very funny. Jordan Harris was right behind him. And it's a game that like they were special teams just sank them. And like you said, attention to details, efforts and things here. The two shorthanded goals that went in tonight in this game were a lack of effort in which people were not hustling back on things. And it is just terrible. And that's my issue there, is that it's not hustle. That's what I want. You know, if you were trying on the back check and they make some crazy 2-on-1 pass or whatever it is, fine. But if you're slowly back checking, sit on the bench for the rest of the game. I don't care at that point. Like, send the message. And it's not like you said, they're not all young guys. They're not all kids. There's adults on this team. Someone step up now. You can't all be Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield. Somebody on this team, step up and do your damn job now, please.
And speaking of stepping up, we're going to talk about who's going to step up in case Kaiden Guile cannot come back soon. He left the game with an injury. We were told he wasn't going to return. We still have no news. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in our next segment. But first, this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. How often do you find out an artist that you love is going to be in town and you fear you missed the boat on buying tickets, and it results in a mad scramble every single time to get your hands on tickets? This keeps happening to me with more than one stand-up comic and things that I want to see, and getting tickets should really not be this stressful. Game Time has flash deals and it's so easy to use. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And Scott, Kaiden Guile. Are we ready to call him injury prone or not? I'm so scared. This player has so much potential. And now he's injured.
I don't even know what knocked him out of this game. They just showed him leaving the tunnel at the end of the second period, and then it was, oh, well, Kaiden Guile is now not returning tonight. And they said upper body injury, he is still being evaluated. Upper body injury covers a lot of territory from above your hips to the top of your head. And I don't generally love that. Someone pointed out on Twitter talking in DMs that it was, well, at least he didn't try to play through that and is day to day for 2 weeks and then is out for the rest of the season. But like, come on. Like the way this season has started is that the Canadiens literally are only catching breaks at this point, it feels like, but it's such a tough pill to swallow that in this game, you already know that you're going to be down one of your best forwards for the rest of the year, and then you lose one of your best defensemen immediately in a blowout game that is pointless. And now it's more lineup shuffling even more now here. Is that what likely is going to happen is Justin Barron will draw into the lineup now because he is the 7th defenseman. And as we've talked about, I wasn't overly impressed with what I saw from Justin Barron in the preseason. And I don't think they're going to bring anyone up from Laval. William Trudeau's had a rough start. Logan Mailloux isn't ready yet. Jaden Struble isn't ready yet. And that leaves a guy like Gustav Lindstrom, who has been bad for the Rockets so far. It's such a no-win situation because it's not like the other young guys are ready and you don't want to just throw them into the fire and be like, here you go, be good at hockey now. I'm not ready to call Kaiden Guile injury prone because like the plays that he got injured on last year was someone pulled him down and he ended up going skates first into the end board. Alex Barkov, the previous injury hit him like knee on knee into the end boards on finishing a check. I'm not going to call that injury prone. It's not like he was skating and just his knee fell apart or something like that. Like they were coming off of the consequences of someone else's action. This one, I am only hoping that it is nothing serious and it was precautionary that they're checking it out. But it's such a downer that we are 3 games in and we've already got a list of injuries to major prospects and players that has to be updated day to day at this point now because it just keeps getting longer now.
I was going through my phone just now to see if there has been any update, and at the point that we are recording this, there is no update on Kaiden Guile. So, Scott, you talked about Justin Barron being the 7th defenseman and him drawing in the lineup. Do we think that there's a possibility that we see anyone from Laval it being called up for defense purposes? Like they already talked about when Kirby Dach was injured. They said not at the current time. They didn't have any plans to call anyone up right now. But does it change the picture now that Kaiden Guile may be injured?
No, because the Rocket also play 3 games this week. The Habs have 1 more game on Saturday. Justin Barron draws in on Saturday more than likely, and they just because the Rocket play Wednesday night, tomorrow, the day you were hearing this, against Rochester.
We'll have that recap, won't we?
Potentially, yes, depending on when we sit down to record the show and whatnot with that is it. There's no good answer because you don't want to disrupt the development of your young prospects to bring them up to potentially just sit in the press box. And at the same time, you don't want to call them up and play them because then you're leaving another prospect, Justin Barron, sitting in the press box. In that, so you play what you have. Maybe they call up Gustav Lindstrom and are like, cool, you're going to sit in the press box for a game. Here's your NHL paycheck. Here's a Bell Center hot dog. Don't injure anybody, basically, while you are here. And then we'll send you back to the Rocket afterwards. The Rocket aren't going to miss him in the lineup in the coming games here. And it allows more ice time for a prospect, someone like a Nicolas Baudin potentially, or someone else. It's just the timing, because next week, if it is longer term, is where things get complicated. Because after the first 2 weeks of the season, where over 14 days, the Habs have played 4 games, they will play 5 games in 8 nights, including starting to go on the road and heading out to Vegas and everything the last week of October. And that's when things get complicated because the Canadiens don't want to burn through that LTIR cap space they got with Carey Price and everyone on there. And at the same time, they need to get healthier and get bodies in here so they can have full practices and whatnot. And I am wondering now, we talked about it with Dach being injured now, that Kent Hughes with all this cap space, who wants to make a deal? Do you have someone you want to get rid of so you can actually call players up now, like Minnesota or whatnot? Cool. Kent Hughes has, several $1 million in cap space that he can weaponize. And I hate using that phrase, but it is the proper one here. And I'm wondering if they look to add a veteran defenseman to this defensive group here, because it's Matheson and Savard, and then everyone else is, 24 and under on this defense that is playing right now. And I don't know what they do now, because we still don't know what this team's ceiling is this season. They've played 3 wildly different games, back and forth shootout, 5-on-5 domination, crap fest. We don't know. We don't know where the line is.
Crap fest. That was so final what you said. Crap fest.
Try and find another way to describe that game tonight, because we both watched it other than crap fest, and I don't think you can. We don't know what the ceiling of this team. We don't know what the baseline for this team is. And now they're losing pieces that were going to help set that baseline. So it's like, what do they actually need to add as this team settles in? And at this point, I I just don't know. And that's, I think, the frustrating part is because I don't know what the ceiling on this team is. They're probably going to be a lottery team, but where are they going to be? First overall bad, or are they going to be, 10th, 11th overall bad? And losing, hopefully, Kaiden Guile not long term will help that. But I would, if this is another serious, like long term injury, I can see Ken Hughes is going to start making some calls and making things happen, because I don't think he wants to rush some of the prospects that he's got with the Rocket right now in this situation, unless they are truly showcasing that they are ready for this.
Right. And there are, I mean, the Canadians have a very weird schedule to start the season. There are no games until Saturday night. We will obviously have that 3 up, 3 down, and recap of that Caps game on our Monday episode. In the meantime, do not forget that Friday is our mailbag episode, and we are going to be back together for this Friday's mailbag. So make sure you send us questions at lockedoncanadians@gmail.com, as well as you can leave them in the YouTube comments. Just put mailbag question. But coming up next, we are going to talk about Cayden Primeau and when will he get an opportunity to prove himself, and that's coming up in our last segment in just a moment. But first, this episode is brought to you by Sleeper. The Habs have obviously not bidding as much as we like coming out of the gate, but if you want to win 100 times your money, play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. All the possible scenarios for this season are there. But if you want to have a chance at winning big, you actually need to play daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. As the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you need to do is pick more or less stats for your favorite NHL stars, or even stars you don't like. Choose stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. You heard me, Habs fans. You can get 100 times the payout on Sleeper. So start paying attention and get your picks right so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. All right, Scott, Cayden Primeau. There's a lot of listeners actually that when I had said that I felt like I was almost giving up on Cayden Primeau, disagreed and said that they still want to give him a chance, and they're not fully certain yet that he's not going to be the NHL starter of the Canadiens in the future, or of the Canadiens' future. I think one thing that I find is that it feels like there's a point where you either max out at the AHL and you need to prove something in the NHL, or you just max out at the NHL at the AHL, you stay there and you just are one of the best AHL goalies, right? Like, I feel like he's so good in the AHL. So when's he going to play? Bearing in mind, you just mentioned how many Rocket games there are coming up. And what do the Canadiens do in the meantime? Like, what does he need to do to sort of prove to the Canadiens he still needs to be in this conversation?
So I'm looking at the Canadian schedule right now. And after they play the Capitals on Saturday, which why there's such a wide break at the start of the season, I don't understand.
And
then they play the Sabres on Monday, the 23rd, the Devils on the 24th, the Blue Jackets on the 26th, the Jets on the 28th, and then the Golden Knights on the 30th to end October. And my thought is, with those 3 games, Montembeault will get one of the Devils or Sabres. Allen will get the other start. And then against the Blue Jackets, I imagine Cayden Primeau will probably get his first start of the season here. Maybe they give him the game against Arizona too. It's just, you can't carry 3 goalies to play him against other crappy teams. Are you going to wait for his next start to be against the Ducks or Sharks at the end of November? He's a goalie who needs to be playing because he's still a prospect in your system here. But and I don't want them to be like, well, we're just going to throw him to the Wolves against the Sabres or Devils, because then that's just not fair to the players that they're saying, we're punting on this start, basically. Good luck. And that's not fun. And we don't know if he's gotten better at the NHL level this year because he hasn't played at it. And now it's going to be interesting. Is he going to have Kaiden Guile there for him? We know he's not going to have Kirby Dach. Like, it's almost such a no-win situation for him. And I'm hoping they figure something out with that. And my thought is, are they still trying to trade Jake Allen and then Primeau becomes that de facto number 2? Because it's very clearly Samuel Montembeau's net. And I something's got to be cooking here, because I don't think they want to carry 3 goalies long term, because it doesn't make sense to, and they're afraid to put him on waivers and lose him for nothing. So I can understand they would probably rather trade him for something instead. So I don't see a start for him until the 26th, which is 9 days from now. But after that, it's up in the air. You don't want to throw him to the Wolves, but at the same time, he's got to play NHL games, and you got to make a call here. Sooner or later, you got to start carrying 2 goalies and bring some extra bodies up to fill in your lineup now.
It sounds very morbid, and I really hope I don't jinx the Canadiens, but do you think Kent Hughes is sitting around waiting for some other team's goaltender to get injured to trade one of them?
Probably, yeah. Or one of them
this
to
makes
be
sense.
or one of them just be terrible. Like, who knows,
Yeah.
And I bet you he was hoping that maybe Jake Allen would have given him a stronger start against the Leafs. And
Yeah.
there's probably a lot of moving piece here, because it's early in the season and teams don't have cap space. Do teams want to trade an NHL goalie who they probably don't want to pay as much to the Canadiens? Maybe. If there's term on it, I'm not interested, but it's so hard trying to find out how to rotate 3 goalies, because the Rocket did this in the AHL a few years ago, where they had Primeau, they had Kevin Poulin, and then they had Vasily Demchenko, who came over from Russia. Demchenko played like 4 games all season. It's such a hard balance to strike, especially at the NHL level, where you don't have 3-3 weekends or like 4 games in a week all the time here. And it's also the NHL. It is a league where it is not about development, it is about winning games, and trying to maximize both of those is a hard contest. For people who are asking when he's going to play, I think the Blue Jackets game will be Cayden Primeau's first start this season, barring anything nuts.
I'm going to see if I can coerce one of our good friends to be on that episode, on that recap with us, because that's going to be really, really fun. The Blue Jackets are an interesting team. They were an interesting team last year. Unfortunately, they got hit by almost as many injuries as the Canadiens did. But I don't know. I feel like it's so early in the season that many of the things that we're saying and the opinions that we have right now are going to be completely moot in like November, right? But November is just around the corner. I'll say, okay, they'll be completely moot by early December, okay? In the meantime, obviously, we will have the game recaps for you. We do have a mailbag coming up, but we also have an episode tomorrow, because we are your team every single day. We're here 5 days a week, wherever you get your podcast. So make sure you are subscribed to Locked On Canadiens on YouTube, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on all social media individually. I'm at The Active Stick. Scott is at Scott Matla. Our Twitter account is LO_Canadiens, and our email is lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. I love hearing from you, but also send mailbag questions as well. I love correspondence, but send us mailbag questions. You can also put mailbag questions in the YouTube comments. Just make sure you put mailbag at the beginning of your comments so we know it's one that you want us to bring up on our Friday mailbag episodes. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.